So I want to just tell you a little bit of the why and how of these awards. And, I think we can all agree that we need more heroes and heroines. I mean, we really do. But what I mean by that, and we found this incredibly with the Wildlife Film Festival, is that, number one, when you recognize certain people, it almost sends an echo around the city, the country, the world, that these people have done something to impact the world, to change the world in some way, to impact, to inspire. And when we're reminded of that, it often inspires us to go out and do more and do something. And so I think that in recognizing people, we're sending out kind of a ripple effect. The other thing is that, and I've seen this over and over again, is that so often people that we think have been so recognized for the incredible work or impact they've had, they haven't really been. They have in some ways, but not in the ways that it might mean something to them. And a number of years ago, we gave an award, and I believe it was a Conservation Hero Award, to an individual who had founded an organization called Panthera, and the goal and the mission was to save the world's wild cats. And he's a billionaire philanthropist, so they usually recognize the field scientists, but apparently nobody ever recognized him. And so he came to Missoula, and he received an award, and it was a lesson again. He said, "This is the nicest thing I've ever received." And I thought, but that was a really, really big message. So it's both to let people know who are changing the world that they have had a major impact, and also to inspire others. And so our first award tonight goes to an individual who many people, have no idea of the breadth and scope of his impact with horses and mules and wilderness and backcountry and nature and kids. Backcountry Horsemen of Missoula has co-sponsored this Lifetime Achievement Award, which goes tonight to Smoke Elser. And to present the award, I'd like to invite Ken Brown from Backcountry Horsemen of Missoula.
Well, I am the vice president of the Backcountry Horsemen of Missoula.
This is Mike, please.
All right. I'm the Backcountry Horsemen of Missoula vice president. So, 1956, Smoke can remember back then, I'm sure. He came to Montana, University of Montana, and in the summer, he worked for the Helena National Forest Service. In the fall, he started working for the Whitetail Ranch, which was an outfitter business out of Ovando, Montana. And there he worked for two gentlemen, Howard Copenhaver and Tom Hobnob Edwards. And I think they've had a great effect on his career, and a lot of things that Smoke carried on as far as teaching was in effect from that association. So Smoke graduated from the University of Montana, that's an important thing, with a BA in education. And I don't know that he ever taught formally, but that education he's used throughout his entire career. He majored in biological sciences, emphasis on forestry, and a minor in physical sciences. And his teaching certificate was from grades 7 to 12. That was probably a little high for some of us folks that have taken his class, but somehow he was able to accommodate us. So I say that because I've had some associations with smoke, and we'll kind of get there hopefully. So he also, in 1964, started his own packing business, Wilderness Outfitters. So, those are 8-day trips, and a number of people are on there, so 4 to 6 guests. And so you're doing all the shoeing, the veterinary work, you're breeding animals, you're breaking animals, you're doing the packing, and you're dealing with people. And I think I've heard in the past, Smoke will say, dealing with the animals was the easy part, it was the people. That was the hard part. But he was a good learner, and I think that education really helped him because he's done a great job over the years. Of course, Smoke was also famous for his cooking skills. And I think when we had days that were rainy or they were cold and difficult, that was one of the things that really engaged his guests. So it's estimated he has had 5,000 guests on summer trips and close to 1,000 on hunts. And it's estimated that he's traveled 20,000 miles in a saddle. So if you wonder how far that is, that's the tip of South America to the tip of North America. He also at that time started a packing class through the University of Montana, which he presently teaches. And so typically there are 15 students, 4 days a week for 8 weeks. And and it says in here that he's, that there were 5,000 students. I think that number is a little high because some of us took that class twice. In 1974, and this is where it became important for the backcountry enforcement, the first club was started in Columbia Falls, and the second one was started in Missoula, and Smoke was one of the 7 founding members of that, and he was also the first interim president of that organization. And of course, he's gone on to, I think 3 times he was president and has been involved in also our state organization. So the Backcountry Horseman is international. I don't know how many states, I'm going to say 27. I think we have 17 chapters in Montana alone. So it's really grown. About that time, I never met Smoke at that time, but I met one of his mules. And a friend of mine had horses, and we were riding them. And Smoke was on the west side of the Rattlesnake at that point. And I was riding a horse, and we were kind of loping across. And I guess we got too close to a mule, and he nailed me along with the horse. So about a year later, I got a chance to buy that horse. And so that's kind of how I got into it. It was just kind of a circumstance, but anyway, I got to meet one of Smoke's mules. In 1980, Smoke, along with Bill Brown, wrote Packing In on Mules and Horses. It's still the Bible. You can still buy it. I have an autographed copy. It's not for sale. So at that time, he's also was in the Missoula Rotary and served on their environmental committee. In 1995, the Missoula Carousel was created. I think on Thursday, folks from this festival.
Oh, yeah,
were
Thursday
there.
evening, yes, we were there.
And so the Rotary Club sponsored his horse, Cannonball. And that's one of the things that Smoke would talk about is how do you pack a cannonball. And there's 2 cents to that. He actually could tell you how to pack a cannonball, but the other thing that was his horse. And I did get to meet that horse the first time. And that was 1980 when I did that. So We jump ahead, 2011, Montana PBS created an hour-long documentary about smoke, smoke's life entitled 3 Miles an Hour. PBS stated it's the speed of a horse, and so folks say the best way to see and savor life well lived. And I think that speed is what maybe makes it compatible for horses to be in the backcountry. It's not a racetrack, it's not a race course for mechanized, motorized, and transportation, and the horses fit in, and they fit in with the wildlife there. And it's just a good connection. So in 2012, we received the Distinguished Citizen Award from the Montana Council of Boy Scouts and the Distinguished Alumni Award from the Forestry Alumni Association. In 2013, he's picking up speed here, unlike my speech. The Conservation Roundtable Lifetime Conservation Achievement Award. 2014, the Legacy Award from the Backcountry Horsemen of America. And in 2016, he was inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame. And if any of you are aware of that, this material is from that nomination, which I have to give credit to Dean Hoisted. If I got it right, he takes credit. If I got it wrong, I guess that's mine. So, qualifications of Smoke. He's an instructor on Light on the Line, stock use, certified by the National Outdoor Leadership School as a master instructor of no-trace camping. He's provided training services to the U.S. Forest Service, Park Service, BLM, National State Fish and Wildlife Services, military groups, including the Special Forces, and he's often sought at conventions as a keynote speaker. He's also served on many other organizations, Professional Wilderness Outfitters Association, Montana Outfitters Guide Association, co-chairman, the Legislative Committee for over 10 years. Montana Wilderness Association is on the honorary board of directors for the Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation, member of the U.S. Forest Service Regional 1 PAC training board, and if you've ever seen that PAC training, it's obviously significant historical presence for us, the PAC in the backcountry, and a very good example for people to see. And he was on the advisory board for the School of Forestry and Conservation, and he also served 6 years on the Montana Tourism Advisory Council. And he was also, I believe, a board member for the Missoula Youth Homes, and also on the Blackfoot Stewardship Project. One of the things that he's noted for on there is there was a compromise in doing up some area of that proposed wilderness for mountain bikes, and in that compromise, Smoke did not agree with that. And you know, there's somebody else that didn't, and a quote from him is, "For me and thousands with similar inclinations, the most important passion of life is the overpowering desire to escape periodically from the clutches of a mechanized civilization." And I think that includes those mountain bikes, and that was Bob Marshall. The other thing is that Smoke is also known to tell a few stories. Some of them are true. And in 1983, I floated down the South Fork of the Flathead River in the Bob Marshall and stopped at Big Prairie. And Smoke happened to be with his guests, and we had gone off into the trees, and there's a crashed plane there from, I believe, Bob Johnson. And we were sitting there and admiring it and looking at it, and all of a sudden smoke comes and he's got his guests and he jumps in the cockpit of that plane and he's telling how that whole crash, he's got that plane rocking and rolling and jumping up and down and it crashes it on its nose, you know, and stuff. And so the people I were with knew nothing about smoke and they said, geez, I'd go on those trips just for the stories. So anyway, you know, we should probably do this every 5 years because you can see as he's going along, he's picking up steam. So this is not the end of the saga. This is only just an installment. So Smoke, you obviously deserve this award and many more.
Yes, it is. So, Smoke, we're not going to let you get away without any stories tonight, but we'll do it afterwards. Thank you, Smoke, for everything you've done for wilderness, for horses, for mules, for people, for backcountry. Thank you. So now you can add that to, you know, that whole long list. Now you've got one more, but thank you. Smoke was one of the first people I met when I came to Missoula, and I thought, wow, thank you. So y'all know, of course, that we're giving the first ever Equine Icon Award to Monty Roberts. I want to just tell you a little story. I may have mentioned a few of these pieces to you, but I was working for the Pittsburgh Zoo for the past 4 years and literally commuting. But it was a very special opportunity, and I think it was my first day there, and I knew that the president of the zoo, who's a woman and a veterinarian by background, that I heard everything from crazy to walks to the beat of her own drummer, et cetera, et cetera. I walk in her office, and there's a beautiful saddle that she's won. She was a barrel racer, and I thought, ooh, I think I've come to the right place. And because I was missing, you know, the West and horses and all that. And she hands me this book and she says, read it. And she had highlighted in yellow, like endless sections. And of course, it was Monty's book. And I thought, oh, well, thanks, Barbara, I already read it. But I kept it. She said, no, just keep it by your side. And every time you need to think about things, read those passages. This was for people, animals, horses, and it's also, what was interesting about that was it's the only zoo in the country that is using equine communications to train. It started out to train the people who work with large mammals like elephants because they wanted them to really understand nonverbal communication, and she felt that equine communications and working with horses for those people would be a really great way for them to do it. And ultimately, she had every single person in the zoo go through both beginner and advanced equine communications, interactions, and training at a nearby barn. So people who lived in the inner city, who had never been out in nature, who had never been around a horse, were terrified of horses, and she made sure that they all read your book. And when, so I told you why we thought and felt that recognizing people is so important. But what really made it for you, Monty, was the way you have always spoken about, number one, children, treating people, humanity, kindness, that bringing all those messages to our work, our interactions with horses, but also our interactions with people. This woman at the Pittsburgh Zoo adopted 7 children. And of course, Monty has raised 47 foster children. 47 foster. And so it was all your messages about, it's not only horses, but it's people and humanity and kindness and nonviolent, that we said if we're going to do an Equine Icon Award, honestly, I never dreamed that you would come and accept it, but we felt that it was very appropriate. So I want to read just a short bio. I'm going to read it because otherwise I'll never remember it, but it's so important. This year, this is some background. So this year, Monty Roberts was named as Horse and Hound magazine's top 50 all-time greatest horsemen. This past July, he was invited to demonstrate his concepts to a full house at the Spanish Riding School in Vienna. And this made him the first outside trainer ever to do this, invited to do this. Monty grew up on a working horse farm as a first-hand witness to traditional and often violent methods of horse training and breaking the spirit with an abusive hand. Rejecting that, he went on to win 9 world championships in the show ring. In 1989, Queen Elizabeth II invited Monty to demonstrate his training methods on her horses at Windsor Castle and has been assisting Her Majesty ever since. In 2011, Her Majesty honored Monty with a member of the Victorian Order Medal for Service to the royal family for his work with horses and people. Monty is the first person to document the language of horses that he calls Equus, and is the creator of the world-renowned, of course, and revolutionary equine training technique called Join Up. Monty travels the world demonstrating that non-violent, gentle training creates breakthrough performance as you partner with your horse. Wanting to share his methods, Monty is credited with launching the first of its kind Equus, fabulous, online university in 2009. So incredible. It's an interactive online lesson site that is the definitive learning tool for violence-free training. Also, he developed horse sense and healing for veterans and first responders suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. Today, Monty's goal is to share his message that violence is not the answer, and he's not done yet, thank goodness.
Say something?
Sure, I would love you to say something and then have Smoke come up as well.
Shall I leave it with you?
Let's get a photo with it. Thank you.
Yeah, let's get a photo with you.
Beautiful, it's beautiful.
Smoke, she'll help you up too. Please,
Who'll help me up?
so that people can see that I need the help.
That's gorgeous. Oh, Janet. Thank you.
Wonderful.
I want to spread that message.
Thank you so much. It's just another arrow in that quiver that I told you about, where I take more away from here than you get from me. But I'll try to equal it over the years and push for this institution, this organization to go further and have the lines right out to the city limits. It really deserves that. And the horses that we serve deserve that kind of recognition too. Where better can that happen than Montana? Debbie and I are staying at Paws Up, and 29 years ago the Queen put me on the road, and I've slept more nights in hotels than I have in my home. And Pat and I have been married 61 years now. And in those 61 years, we've lived in 2 houses, and this one is 52 years in the same house on Flagazette Farms. And Paws Up is not just the first 5-star hotel that I've stayed in. With the Queen's influence, I've been able to stay in wonderful hotels all over the world, including like New Delhi, India, a 5-star hotel in New Delhi, India. Nothing is like this place. Paws Up is the most incredible collection of well thought out buildings and features that hotels just don't have. You just can't find it. And so I give them a huge round of applause from me and from Debbie for putting us there and letting you all know that if you have recommendations to make to your friends, that's a place you ought to send them, because it is fantastic, no doubt about it.
Well,
Now you want me to sit
I
here?
want you to sit and smoke. Would you come on up? And we
Debbie,
thought that we would do a bit of a fireside chat, you know. Wow, to have these two individuals in a room. You're right, all of Missoula should be here, but.
Yeah.
Get the two of them together so I can get a picture of the two of them.
Yes.
You didn't learn What year were you born?
I'm older than dirt.
Well, I'm dirtier than old.
Born in 34.
You're the first man older than me that I've seen in 50 years or so.
You got years to go now, Monty.
34,
All right,
born in
so-
35.
Wow. Questions? Comments? Thoughts? Stories? I know you have stories.
I was gonna ask Smoke if there was ever a time when he thought about ending somebody's life, just choking the life out of them or something. Do you have any story like that?
Not many,
No.
but a couple.
Okay. I'll tell you one about me, and the filmmakers here will enjoy this one. Is Sophie in the room?
Yes, I hear.
Is she there? Yeah. So we're doing the Shy Boy documentary that you saw this afternoon, or was it this afternoon? I can't
Yes.
remember.
Yeah.
And he's going to come back. Here he comes, you know. And I've been all night walking around leading those horses. And this thing was done for real. I mean, those horses were on the other side of that hill, and he came down the hill running, and you saw what happened. And he got to a lot of sagebrush right down here near me, and then he had to go away from me for about 150, 200 yards up there, make a U-turn, and that's when he called out coming back, and that's his call out. That isn't fed in. So that's a difficult thing to get on a film, you know. And I've been a better part of a year trying to figure out how to get this to happen, and it happened, and he came right up to me. Now, I had 3 cameras working on this particular thing, and one guy I found out went into town and had too much to drink and didn't get back out there, so I had 2 cameras that morning to get that shot. And he was out there when this guy was in drinking. And so I was pretty upset that we only had 2 cameras. Would you believe that just before he came to the top of that hill, Lavoy Shepherd, the main man with the cameras, comes to me and said, "We've lost that other camera. There's something wrong with it. It's gone wonky on us. Maybe we'll get it if he does come back." And they were then radioing us that he was headed our way from the top of the ridges. And now I'm down to 1 camera. And it's Lavoy himself, and he's right over here when Shy Boy comes running up to me. And here he comes, and I'm giving him a rub here, and I feel like we've shot enough of that thing where he came back, and I said to Caleb, "You don't have to ride the truck home. You can ride Shy Boy home, and it's all good now." And Lavoy sneaks over and he says, "You think you could get him to do it again?"
Yeah.
I looked at him and I said, have you heard of justifiable homicide? And he said, oh no, I got it, but, and I said, no, we can't get him to do it again, come on. I mean, I should be using this, huh? You hearing me all right? So tell us one of yours now.
I don't think I need this either. Well, I don't have that kind of a story, but I do have a story that I had a guest in the hills once, and his grandfather and grandmother decided they would bring their grandson on a little pack trip, and when he graduated from college. So they brought him on this trip. Well, we started out, and I introduced him to their horses, and they all got on, and we started riding, and the grandfather and grandmother were oohing and awing about all the streams and the mountains and the trees and all the beautiful scenery and everything. But the boy, he could care less. He was sitting there reading a novel on his horse. And this went on for about 2 or 3 days. And finally we got up to the top of the Chinese wall, which is about 1,000-foot drop on one side. And I take him across there to a little lake over there that I like to go to, Diamond Lake. And we were riding along the edge. And this kid was still reading, and the grandfather and grandmother were just out of their mind because they said, geez, we paid a lot of money to bring this young man and show him what real wilderness is and what real association with it, livestock and horses is. So finally I stopped and got off and took the cinch off of the horse. And all of a sudden he put the book away and he paid attention to the horse. And he really, from that time on, he really understood what a good horse can do and how he can carry you along the most dangerous, narrow areas in the world. And yet he can see that all. But the grandfather and grandmother were really pretty pleased with that.
I did a lot of packing when I was a kid. My dad had trips into the Sierras, and my whole thing was they sent me and a kid, you know, a day or two ahead to make camp, set it up, shoot a deer, and get him up in the tree so they had some meat. And it's what's caused me to work with deer. 43 years now I've worked with the same family group of wild deer. And Debbie can tell you, well, I think there was some footage of me with deer walking all around me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I felt like I owed him something after that. But Pat had a cousin that had a kind of a poor man's pack outfitters in Carmel Valley, just out of Salinas there. And I had mules in the Sierras, and I love those mules. 5 head of them, and each time. And my experience with mules has been extra good, and I've always considered them to be extremely more intelligent than horses. But Bill Lambert used horses, and he only made like 2 or 3 pack trips a year, so these horses were always fresh and rusty, you know. But anyway, he packed with boxes and a clove hitch on them, and that wasn't what I did either. I packed with diamond hitches, and he packed with these boxes. And I had 5 head, one tied to the other, and I'm going in to set up for wild boar hunting. And we had people from Field and Stream coming to go in there, and I had to go in and set up camp, get the tents and the sleeping bags there, and get all the food ready. I'm about 3/4 of the way to where I know where the campground is, and I'm about 15 years old, and I'm all right. And I'm coming down this narrow trail, and all of a sudden those horses just go into orbit. I got horses flying by me, I got eggs flying by me, I got bacon flying around the side of the mountain, I got horses going every which way, tied together upside down. And I managed to stay out of it without getting hurt and got my horse away to try to figure out what was going on. And one of these, about the third horse of my 5, ran his box into a tree and knocked a wasp nest out of it. And I had 5 horses covered with wasps, and my horse was getting stung too, and I got stung a couple of times. But cleaning up that canyon and getting all that stuff back together and trying to make a camp, and I didn't have any cell phone, believe me, I didn't have a cell phone today, but I didn't sure have one then that I could call him and tell him, you know, bring some more stuff. So I had to do the best I could, saving as many eggs as I could and the bacon and stuff. But that was an experience I'll never forget, I'll tell you. And I'm sure you've been through some of those kind of things, and it can happen when you're out there.
Many times.
Many times.
I have a question for Smoke, if I may.
Sure.
According to your biographer over here, you've traveled close to, if not more than 10,000 miles on horseback, which is probably more miles than I've ever driven in a car in a lifetime. Along those 10,000 miles, you must have had your share of close calls, such as we just heard. How about a close call story?
Yeah, I've had a few. I've had a few. Let me tell you a little story about Cannonball. You know, he's now a carousel horse over here in Missoula, and Cannonball was a kind of an unusual looking horse. He was thoroughbred and standard bred, so he was really kind of a Roman nose and real tall and lanky. But anyway, I was in the Bob Marshall, and we were camped at Basin Creek in the early fall, and this was a summer trip yet. We weren't hunting yet, but at any rate, we went ahead and made camp, and I decided I'd take the horses and mules all up to. By the way, we turn our horses all loose. We don't picket them or anything. I picket 1 or 2 horses just so we don't have to walk too far to get them. But I turned all the horses and mules loose, and they went up to the airfield, which is in Basin Creek. By the way, it was an airfield developed for World War II when we were lend-leasing to Russia B-24s that flew across the United States from Maelstrom, from Indiana and Illinois, and then flew up over Alaska and over over the top of the world into Russia. But at any rate, my horses were up there grazing. So after we had all our songs and we had sat around and drank all the coffee and all the whiskey we could, we decided everybody to go to bed. So I grabbed Cannonball and we rode up the trail about 2 miles from camp, at the edge of the meadow where I could hear the bells on the horses and mules above me, and rolled out my bedroll and took Cannonball over just a little ways so that I was outside the circle of a rope that he was tied to. And I picketed him and I crawled in my sleeping bag. And everything was going good. Geez, I heard the bells a couple of times during the night and went to sleep. And by golly, I woke up in the morning and everything was heavy on the sleeping bag. I couldn't figure out what the heck is going on here. So I flipped the matty out from my face, and geez, the ground was all white. About that much snow on top. So I got up and grumbled a little bit, and before I got up, and when I threw this back, like Cannonball kind of pulled his head back a little bit like that, because he was standing with his head right over my sleeping bag. I mean, right there. I mean, his feet were 2 feet away from the edge of my sleeping bag. And anyway, he stopped and raised his head and pulled back a little bit. And I went ahead and crawled out. And I said, "Hi, how you doing, old boy?" And got up and started rolling out my gear, and I rolled it all up. And as I looked around, all around the sleeping bag, there were horse tracks first, all around the sleeping bag. And then out about 20 feet maybe were tracks of a very large bear. And it was a grizzly bear, because you can tell by the claws and the size of the print. By the way, I have his print, or one like it, in my living room right now. But at any rate, this bear had walked around my sleeping bag, but Cannonball, my horse, stood over me that whole night while I slept and kept that bear from coming any closer. Normally, horses are kind of afraid of bears, but not Cannonball. And I could tell you one other real quick story where we tried to fill Holland Lake, which is a lake at the edge of the Bob Marshall up the Swan country. It's a lake there. We tried to fill that lake one time with Highlander beer. Yeah, we started out from Holland Lake Lodge with a group of riders called the Helena Wilderness Riders. And that was about a 25-man party. That's when we could take a lot more than we can now. 25 people. And we had about 24 full cases of Highlander beer to pack so that these gentlemen would have something to drink so that in case they got dry. Anyway, we started out from Holland Lake, and we had to go up a switchbacky trail for about 2 miles off and got up above the lake. And then we swung around a large cliffy area there that goes across and then goes on up the valley and then up into the Bob Marshall. But anyway, these mules, we got up early and we were packing them all up and got going and started up that hill. And Howard Copenaver and Tom Edwards and a guy by the name of Ted Clatterbuck and I were leading the stock. And we got up on that cliff and started around. And about the time that I got to the far end of the cliff, where I was starting to say, made it again, you know, I just got across there. Just about then, Howard says, "Smoke, look out." And two of his mules were running right by me on that narrow trail. And of course, it ended up with about 20 head of horses and mules down over the cliff and all the way to the lake. And those beer cans actually rolled, most of them, all the way to the lake. And that was before the aluminum beer can, you know. The cans were solid then. So they almost all rolled to the lake. So it took us almost a full day longer than we thought to get into the hills and gather up everything and put everything back together.
Yeah. But I'll tell you a quick one. I'll try to be as quick as I can with it. But it's, in my opinion, the greatest thing that's ever happened to me to show connection between horse and human. And it was that I had entered the world of high-level global thoroughbred racing, and I was way above Mustangs anymore, and I hadn't started a Mustang in a long time. And a lady came in there, and I hadn't stopped to really consider the fact that how much they taught me and how much I owed them. And I wasn't anywhere near above them. I'm still below them, so don't get the idea. I just felt like I was for a while. And this lady came in and said, "I just adopted a Mustang mare. And I've read about you, and I know what you do, and I know what you did as a kid. And I'd like you to start this mare because I want to make her a champion in the horse shows for Mustangs, Mustang horse show. And so I want you to start her." And I said, "Oh, all right. I haven't started one in 10 years, but a Mustang, but okay." And she said, "Well, can you start her while she's got her foal on her?" What? No, I can't start her while she's got her foal. I didn't know she had a foal. What are you talking about? No, I adopted her with a foal at her side. Well, I said, "Take her home for, how old is this foal?" She said, "It's about 4 or 5 months." I said, "Well, take her home for another month or two, and when you've weaned this foal, and they quit hollering for one another, take this foal off when you wean them down the road to some neighbor somewhere, half a mile away, so they can't hear one another. And when you've got them well separated, bring her back, and I'll start her for you." So she said, okay. She was from Lompoc, this lady, and she's 20 miles away. So she comes back on the day, and they back their trailer up to my round pen and open up the gate, and they run this mare out of there wild as a deer. You just couldn't believe it. I mean, she buzzed around that place. And, but it felt good, you know, that I was going to start a Mustang. Now, if you go back studying horses and you look in the caves, and I've studied the drawings in the caves in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Italy, in France, and clear over into parts of Asia. I've studied the carvings in there. And I've studied them in Mexico too. There's some carvings down there that are interesting. And almost every place where they do carvings about horses and the domestication of horses, which means we're back there, thousands of years in caves, almost every time there's a child, a human child, down on its hands and knees, nursing from a mare. And it's almost like a little moniker, like they made this as a theme, because it goes to all these places. Now, mind you, they weren't traveling from one of these places to another, so it was some kind of a brain thing on their own, and they've got it in Mexico. Now, there's no indigenous horses in Mexico. So how did this happen? Well, that's one for the books now, and you'll maybe hear about it more, because they're still trying to figure this out. But anyway, I go in the round pen and I begin to join up with this mare. And if you take a right raw Mustang, it's generally about 2 hours before you can get a good join up in a round pen, where you're stroking on her and she'll take a step towards you and stuff like that. And it was exactly 2 hours for this mare until I had her locked up to me, and she was pretty good. And I was over. If you call the gate into the round pen, and big solid walls 7 feet high, if you call the gate 6 o'clock in the circle of a round pen, directly across of it, of course, is 12 o'clock. So I always try to do my work from 12 o'clock if I want to pull them off the wall, because they'll tend to go to 6 o'clock, which is the bottom of the dial, and that's where home is. And Smoke will know that you put your hands down, he'll take you home. So they try to drift to 6 o'clock. So I had her up at 12 o'clock, and a kid named Sean McCarthy was riding for me, and I just had at that time one stand where you could see into my round pen just for my rider, so he could see in there. And he was up on that thing, and I said, you can bring in the saddle and the saddle pad, another long line, the normal things that I want at that point in time. He knew them, And he comes in through the door, walks out there and puts the saddle on its nose. It was a little western saddle we were using. Puts the pad on top of that, and it was a wool pad. Puts it on top of that, snaffle bit down there, another long line. Out the gate he goes. And from 12 o'clock, I take one step toward the saddle. Normally the horses follow me over there, and they take a look at it, and they think it's a wolf. A wool pad on there. And so I'm used to that kind of thing. Well, I take one step toward this saddle, and this mare goes by me 9-0. She's running as fast as her feet can carry her past me, just like that. And she dives on that saddle out there in the middle of the round pen. And she's throwing stirrups over here and skirts over there, and the pad's up in the air, and she's squalling. You can hear her all over my farm. And Sean's up there, and I'm at 12 o'clock. And I got to get her. I can't go over that wall. I had just had back surgeries, and I can't go over the wall, no way. So I got to get around past 9 o'clock and over to that gate at 6 o'clock, because I might be next on the menu. And so I start around the wall. Sean don't want to jump down in there and help me any. He's about 18 years old at the time and athletic as hell. He could have jumped over the wall, but he didn't want in that round pen either. And the saddle was ripped to shreds. And the saddle pad was ripped to shreds. And I got to 9 o'clock over here, just sneaking along, not trying to get any attention on me. And I got to 9 o'clock, and here that mare comes running straight at me. And I'm thinking how ugly this is going to be. It's really going to be bad. I'm probably not living much longer. And I go down in fetal position on my hands and knees like this. And the next thing I know, I'm seeing front feet right here in front of me. Like doing a piaffe. Like this. And I feel those back feet right by my boots. But she hasn't touched me. She hasn't stepped on any portion of me, but they're there. Front feet here, and hind feet behind me. And I'm thinking, what is going on? When's she gonna eat me, you know? And she didn't hurt me. And I think, you know, it seemed like a half an hour. I think this went on for like 10, 15 seconds. And all of a sudden she left me like a shot and went back and grabbed another piece of that saddle and slung it around and squealed at it and came back at me. But when she left me, her ears were flat back on her neck and she's going for that saddle. And I'm looking at her like this, and here she comes back. She only went out there and just did a U-turn, flicked the saddle once, and here she comes back at me and her ears are forward. And Sean's got a foot up on top of the fence and he's going to jump in with me now. And I said, Sean, wait a minute, something's going on here. And I double up a little more, front feet here, hind feet here, and what's this thumping? And I'm looking back, and the back of each of my calves is soaking wet. And that mare is letting her milk down, standing over the top of me. And I'm right there going, them drawings in the caves. I'm not going to nurse this mare. That ain't gonna happen. But I said, Sean, look what's going on here. He said, she's milking you. And I said, she ain't milking me, I'm milking her. And we were talking to each other like that, and then he jumped in. And when he jumped in, she got tighter to me, and I said, Sean, be easy, but gather the pieces of that saddle up and get it out of here. And he did. He gathered up the saddle, got the blanket, and got out through the gate and closed it. And she just kind of drifted a little bit away from me, and I got up along the wall, and here she comes locked back up to me, and I'm walking around the pen, and I clipped a line on that halter, and I said, Sean, bring us another saddle. And he brought another saddle in, and I kept hold of her, and we kind of kept that saddle tucked away, and the pad too, and got the pad up on her back, got the saddle on her. Sean rode her, and this all happened in about 2 hours and 40 minutes. And Sean rode her, and our owner wasn't even there. She had her job to do, and she didn't even see it. And I didn't have it on camera either. But anyway, she came and got the mare and rode her there 2 or 3 days on my farm, and went off, and she became champion after championship in those old Mustang horse shows. But you talk about misreading horses now. When we go out there and say, why this knothead, you know, you need to get a 2x4 and you need to do all this stuff. And I mean, we saw it today in that last film. There's such a close connection between horse and human. We just haven't figured out how to get there. And I'm watching that thing, and I'm learning a lot of lessons from it. One of the lessons I'm learning is that I'm not doing enough of what I preach. And when I go do my demonstrations, I have to be 30 minutes a horse. And I do 4 horses in the night with a 3-hour thing with a half-hour interval in the middle of it. And with introduction and exchanging one horse for the other, I only have 30 minutes per horse. But I promise you this, I said it to the filmmaker here. I say all the time, if we go at something like we have 15 minutes to do it, it might take us all day. If we go at it like we have all day, we might get it done in 15 minutes. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure out how to go at everything like I have all day, and not let the clock or circumstances change my relationship with these horses. I'm doing okay with my horses, and they're doing okay, but I can improve everything. And I learned several lessons from that one today. And one of them certainly is that I'm not so sure that horses can heal us at all. I'm not so sure that horses do any healing. You know, I just think they be themselves. And we go there where they are. And we do the healing in here, in us. I don't think the horse reaches outside of his body and heals us. It's us that has to heal us. And I believe sincerely that we get to be at one with the horses, like you saw those people doing in that film this afternoon here, was so impressive, because they got where the horses were, and that big old steer. They got where they were, and then they healed themselves. And you know, when we're doing our businesses, I was thinking, we get so in tune with the bottom line, we get so in tune with the arithmetic and all of the nuances of doing business these days, and we don't often just think about what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it, so that we improve ourselves. And I still have they gave me a phone that doesn't have a cord on it and it doesn't have a dial on it, but it still has a flip top on it. And I can take calls and make calls with it. I've learned that. But I have never turned a computer on or off. And I'm going to become more in tune with my colloquial knowledge, even though I have 2 doctorates from these things called universities. Not one horse has ever realized that I have a doctorate. But I think they realize that I'm in tune with them. And because of your video today, I'm going to be more in tune with my horses from this day forward. I will take from Missoula more than I gave to Missoula. I appreciate you guys more than you can imagine.
There's no way I can top that.
There may be some questions. Here they go.
Yes.
Well, Smoke, you know, I saw the movie Dinah about a mule that they trained for dressage. I can't even say it. Dressage. So Deloitte Wolf had a mule called Horse, and of course that was kind of his personality. But he kind of gave me a story where that mule came from, and I think your name came up in that conversation. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I bred the mare and raised the colt and used that mule colt for 2 years. We called him Bucky. And not particularly because he bucked so much, but because he would never stay with the herd. He was an individual. And that mule would start down the trail and just go on his own and go cross country. He didn't follow any trails or anything else. And he quite often would take 2 or 3 or a dozen of our horses and mules with him. So after we chased him about 1 summer and half of the next summer, I got rid of him.
You thought somebody else should own him?
Yep, I thought somebody else needs to own
He
him.
bucked the trend.
Yeah, he bucked the trend. Yeah, Bucky was a mule called Horse. Yes,
There's a lady
Marnie?
had her hand up right there.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could say a little bit about Afghanistan.
Well, I can't say too much about Afghanistan, but I haven't been there. But, you know, in September 11th, in September 9th, when the World Trade Center was bombed and destroyed, about a month or 2 before that, I trained a bunch of military, Delta Force, military men, how to pack stingers and all kinds of weapons, and got them familiar with horses and mules. And I often wondered, what the heck are these guys ever going to do with that? Well, about 3 weeks after 9/11, we had special forces on a mountaintop in Afghanistan. And at that time, they were flown in there by helicopter. And the next thing they had to do is capture stock and all kinds of stock, you know, big ones and little ones and old ones and all shapes of animals. And they packed those animals and rode them. And the reason they did that, I often wondered, why in the heck, you know, I thought the military, they were on foot or helicopter or jets, you know, something like that. But anyway, they packed these animals mainly because they had to carry so much electronic equipment. The soldiers that I talked to after that, after we fired the first shot, within 3 weeks of 9/11, we were shooting at the Taliban, and the way we were able to do that is that we carried laptop computers, which I can't turn one on either, and never have, and I don't use one of those phones at all either. But at any rate, they had a laptop computer hanging on one side of a horse, a laser binocular on the other side of the horse, and batteries and everything to make communication with those. And what they did is they set out 3 weeks after 9/11 and went down ridges and down unusual trails in that part of the country. At about 3 o'clock in the morning. By the way, a horse can see a lot better than we can because they have a larger eyeball and they can really collect light a lot better than we can. But at any rate, they traveled in the dark, and just as it was breaking daylight, they got out their laser binoculars and spotted most of the Taliban's heavy armor, which was nothing but old Russian equipment. But at any rate, they spotted that, and they spotted a lot of trucks and that kind of stuff. And they got on their laptop computer and emailed Florida. And when they emailed Florida, of course, they GPS marked the sites. And then Florida emailed the B-52s flying at about 36,000 feet above Afghanistan and told them how to set the bombs. So those bombs were individually set for each target that these special forces located. And that's why we didn't see any Taliban armor of any kind really to fight with. And they did that with the use of horses.
You got no credit for it.
I don't need any credit. One other thing I'd like to say, you know, I've handled thousands of people in the hills, and what I tried to do my whole life is I try to teach people the hush of the land. And the hush of the land comes with understanding livestock, horses and mules. By the end of most of all of our trips, I've had guests thank their horses, kiss their horses, do all kinds of things with their animals. And every Christmas for years after, we would get a bundle of carrots, a box of apples for Christmas. And the Christmas card came to Thelma and I. But actually the comment was for their horse. Many of our guests did that, and still do, as a matter of fact. Matter of fact, I had a lady ask me the other day if I still had this horse. And of course, horses only live so long, so you got to respect when they're done, they're finished. So, but in my barn, I have, I don't know, there must be 70 or 80 names written on the wall, because every time one dies or one passes on, and I have to bury them. And by the way, I bought a backhoe just so I could do that. I'm not going to haul those horses out to the dump or, you know, just have somebody pick them up and kill them themselves. Anyway, I've got them all written down. Some of them are 30 and 35 and 40 years old. I have a mule right now that's over 30, 35, matter of fact, over 35.
Well, Stefan certainly had a lot of experience with the ladies that wanted to kiss their horse.
Not just the ladies.
Yeah, not just the ladies.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's most of my people.
And,
Really,
it's a wonderful thing. I really don't want to put that down. If they feel that horse is healing them, I don't want to be sending that message that it's not. If you believe that, keep it, love it, hold it. I just have come to the realization that if there's healing done, we probably do it ourselves, and the horses help us go there. I think it's a better way of my thinking, anyway.
In this festival, film festival, I spoke at one other one over at the university. Nobody really pays that much attention to horses. Sure, they love to race them, and they love to show them, and they love to ride them. But this film festival brings the heart out of the horse and puts the heart in everyone that's sitting here. And that's what I really appreciate about this kind of a festival. And if I can ever be of any help forever,
Thank you.
I will certainly be right there
You have.
to do it.
You have.
I'll just give you a little information about the documentary that you saw on Lomitas. And man, that horse, I just want you to know that the first time I ever met him, I got off the plane, they took me straight to him. And I was only with him about an hour, and I had him on a halter with a line, and I'm in a particular place where he's kind of in an enclosure there, and I fooled around with him a little bit just to see what his attitude was. And he was telling me that he was the boss, and he's going to take me over. He'd seen a lot of guys like me, and he was in charge. And he made a quick move and kind of bumped the wall and looked at me like he might even want to get aggressive with me. And I stopped and I said to myself, Monty Roberts, you better get your work right, because you're in the presence of greatness. And I said those words to myself. And I thought, what are you doing? Saying those kind of things to yourself. Presence of greatness. You only know the horse 2 hours, you're probably not great at all. Then I looked at him again and I said, maybe I'm right about that. Well, this horse is dead now. You saw his gravestone, if you saw that thing. But Silvano is his son. And I bought a mare in California and took her over to Germany to breed to him, called Spirit of Eagles. And in Germany, when one is born, they have to use the mare's first letter. So he's Silvano, and her next foal was Sabiango. And Silvano won $6 million on the race course. Lomitas, it doesn't tell you in that documentary, had a veterinarian scheduled to come and put him down because he was banned from every race course on the face of the earth. He was on the red line, not entitled to enter any registered race course. And Mr. Jacobs didn't want him to kill anybody. He had 3 people in the hospital at the time. And he said, just put him down. And they called the veterinarian and he said, I'll be there day after tomorrow or whatever, and put him down. And then the trainer called me in California at the behest of an English trainer that had a horse injured while they were trying to fight him to go in the starting gate. And then the trainer called Mr. Jacobs and said, I've got this guy from California and he will come over. Let's give him one more chance. And that was his chance to save those genetics. And Silvano wins the $6 million. And I was here in Missoula, Montana, with that M up here on the hill. And I was doing the demonstration here on the day that he was entered in the Arlington Million. $1 million of the winner. And I stopped my demonstration, and Pat and I went out and got on our bus with the TV, and they had it all programmed so that I could get the Arlington Million on TV. And he won the Arlington Million while I was right here in Missoula. We went on up into Canada, etc. Then I was to learn that her next foal, Sabiango, won in the same week a Group 1 in Baden-Baden, Germany. This mare produced 2 Group 1 winners, and I bought her for a song. I bought her for very little money, California bred. Now those 2 have gone on to be sires. But that's not the end of it. Silvano is today the leading sire in South Africa. Not only is he the leading sire in South Africa, but he has broken all records. Every single record that a breeding sire can have in South Africa has been broken by a horse called Silvano, by Lomitas, as we sit here. And just in the last 3 weeks, his offspring have won 4 of the top races of the entire world. They're called very special races with Group 1 plus status. And their derby broke all records by having Lomitas's offspring win first, second, and third in the same derby. That's never been done in any racing portion of this earth before. So you saw a very special horse here today in Lomitas. And they did that documentary 2 years ago for my 25th anniversary of working with Lomitas. The Jacobs family did that for me. And I have to tell you that I haven't seen it for those 2 years. And when I saw it today, it was tough duty for me to see that wonderful horse again and to think about all that's gone on since he's been. And I've got to start to realize more about, you know, the good things that are happening to me. I'm the luckiest man in the world. And we tend to just keep mashing on and trying to do the next thing. I'm going to go off to some film festival. And coming here has been so inspirational to me to stop, to take a breath, to see what I'm doing, understand what I'm doing, get better at what I'm doing. And maybe in a year or two I can come back here and show the film festival some new accomplishments of some kind. But if I just keep thinking about mashing on and watching the clock, I won't do that. So I promise you I'll try to get better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay?
Yes. Thank you all
It's been a wonderful
so much.
experience.
It's been great.
Nice to meet you, sir.
You betcha.
We all have been having trouble with these little steps.
Yeah, little steps.
Little steps
Smoke.
and big feet.
Smoke, don't go home without.
Don't forget your mule.
The mule is good for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. You got an early start. Oh, this is spectacular.